She said I was overthinking. That was her line whenever I asked too many questions. Whenever my gut told me something didn't add up. You're just overthinking again, babe. You always do this. And I wanted to believe her. God knows I did. I've always been the type to analyze too much. To run scenarios in my head late at night. To get stuck on little details. She knew that about me. She used it like a shield. Deflecting every doubt. Every suspicion. But then one afternoon, sitting in her car, I found it. A folded piece of paper half tucked under the passenger seat. A receipt for a wedding dress. I stared at it like it was written in another language. The date was recent. The store was one we'd passed downtown a dozen times. The one with the mannequins in white gowns in the front window. And the name printed on the slip. Hers. Paid in full. No return policy. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. And the only words I could hear in my head over and over were the ones she always threw at me. You're overthinking. But how the hell do you overthink a wedding dress receipt? We weren't engaged. We weren't even talking about marriage seriously anymore. We'd had conversations, sure, but they always ended with her changing the subject, laughing it off, saying someday maybe. And now here it was in my hands. Proof she'd bought a gown for a wedding I wasn't invited to. I didn't confront her right away. That probably surprises you. Most men would have stormed into the house, slammed the paper on the table, demanded an explanation, but not me. I've learned something about lies. They unravel better when you let them breathe. If you push too soon, they harden, they twist, they find new shapes. But if you wait, if you give them space, they collapse under their own weight. So I slipped the receipt back exactly where I found it, folded the same way, tucked under the same corner of the seat, and I acted normal. I kissed her on the cheek when she came home, asked about her day, joked about dinner. All the while that slip of paper burned in my memory like a live coal. The following week, I started paying closer attention. Her phone habits, her schedule, the excuses she thought I wouldn't notice. She'd leave for yoga class, but come back with damp hair like she'd been showering somewhere else. She started humming to herself more, smiling at random texts, brushing off questions with that same dismissive line. You're overthinking. But my mind was sharp now. No more self-doubt. The receipt had shifted everything. I tested her one night. Hey, we should go downtown this weekend. Maybe check out that bridal store, see if they've got anything fun in the windows. I said it casually, sipping my drink, watching her carefully. Her reaction was instant. Too quick. She laughed. Too high-pitched. Shook her head. Why would we do that? You're getting weird again. Weird. Overthinking. Paranoid. The same script. Just recycled. And now I had proof she was acting. I started going through her car more. Not snooping, just looking. People underestimate how much of themselves they leave in their cars. Receipts, wrappers, notes, traces of places they've been. And she was sloppy. One day I found a business card from a wedding planner. Another time a small swatch of ivory fabric tucked into the console. Always small things, but together they told a bigger story. The hardest part was pretending, sitting across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about her day, smiling and nodding like I wasn't picturing her trying on wedding gowns for someone else. Holding her hand while we watched TV, while my mind screamed questions I couldn't ask yet. Sharing a bed with her, feeling the distance grow wider even as her body lay next to mine. But I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. I started keeping records, photos of what I found, notes on her excuses, timestamps of when she left, and when she came back. At first it felt crazy obsessive, but then I remembered how many times she'd told me I was overthinking. I needed proof, not just for her, but for myself. To remind myself that I wasn't insane, that I wasn't inventing the cracks I saw forming. One Saturday I told her I had to work late. Instead I parked a few blocks away from the bridal store listed on the receipt. I waited. 2 hours. 3. And then I saw her, walking out the doors, laughing with another woman. A garment bag slung over her arm. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, but I forced myself to stay calm. I snapped a photo from the car, hands shaking, and ducked lower in the seat. When she got home that night, she kissed me like nothing had happened. Asked how work went. I told her it was fine. Inside I felt like I was made of glass, ready to shatter. But outside I was stone. Because stone is what you need to be when you're building something, like a plan. The turning point came when I stumbled onto her voice memos, just like before with the car receipts. It was almost an accident. Her phone was on the counter, unlocked, and a notification popped up. A memo. I don't know what made me press play. Maybe curiosity, maybe desperation. But what I heard gutted me. Her voice, soft, giddy, different than the one she used with me. Talking about the big day, saying she couldn't wait to walk down the aisle, laughing about how I'd never see it coming. I stopped breathing for a moment. My whole body went cold. And then slowly, the cold turned into something else. Not rage, not heartbreak. Something sharper. Something that whispered, "She thinks you're blind, but she doesn't know how well you see." That night I kissed her forehead as she slept, staring at the ceiling while my mind raced. She thought I was overthinking. She thought she was clever. But the more she laughed, the clearer it became. She wasn't just betraying me. She was underestimating, and underestimation is always the biggest mistake. So I waited. I gathered. I stayed calm. But deep down, I was already planning how I'd turn her little secret wedding into her public undoing. Because if she thought a receipt buried under a car seat was the end of the story, she hadn't even read the first chapter. The thing about planning is that it keeps you sane. It gave me something to focus on when the weight of betrayal pressed down on me. Every time she brushed me off with that dismissive laugh, every time she said I was just overthinking again, I reminded myself of the wedding dress receipt tucked under her seat, the photo of her with that garment bag, the memo of her giggling about a big day I wasn't invited to. The evidence was my anchor. And the plan, that was the knife I was sharpening in the dark. The first part of the plan was confirmation. I needed to know who, because a dress meant a groom. And if it wasn't me, then who the hell was it? She wasn't wearing a ring, but she was glowing sometimes, humming to herself when she thought I wasn't watching. That glow wasn't for me anymore. I got my answer on a Thursday night. She told me she had a girls' dinner. I let her go. 10 minutes later, I was in my car, following at a distance. She drove not to a restaurant but to a quiet cafe 2 towns over, the kind of place couples think no one will notice them in. I parked across the street, and then he showed up, clean cut, mid-40s, suit jacket slung over his shoulder. I didn't recognize him, but he carried himself like a man who thought he was winning something. He kissed her cheek when he sat down. She leaned into him, giggling, touching his hand. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay still, to keep watching. And then, the moment that confirmed everything, she pulled out a binder, a wedding planner's binder. They flipped through it together, pointing, smiling. He kissed her hand, and she looked at him, the way she hadn't looked at me in years. I snapped photos through the windshield, hands shaking, but steady enough. Proof of him, proof of them, proof of their little fantasy life. I didn't confront her that night either. Not yet. I let her come home, kiss me on the cheek, tell me how fun her girls' night had been. I smiled, nodded, tucked her in, and then I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through the pictures I'd taken, memorizing every angle of his smug face. The second part of the plan was patient. She was building towards something, some wedding, some future. I wanted to know when, so I kept listening to the memos, checking her car, watching her patterns, and eventually it slipped out. A recording of her whispering about September, about how she couldn't wait to walk down the aisle by the water. September. That gave me months to plan how to unravel her lie. I didn't want some private confrontation where she could cry and spin and tell me I'd misunderstood. No, I wanted her lies exposed in the exact same way she'd hidden them, in her own voice, her own words, her own choices. And then I realized where it had to happen. At her own big day. I met with Amanda, my lawyer. She'd helped me before, and when I laid out the evidence, her eyes went wide. She bought a wedding dress. While married to you, I slid the receipts, photos and memos, across the desk. I want out, but not quietly. Amanda leaned back, studying me. You want to play this loud? I nodded. Loud enough that she never forgets it. The weeks that followed were surreal. Living with her while knowing she was planning a wedding with another man, watching her hum in the kitchen, watching her scroll Pinterest boards on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She thought she was clever, slipping away for fittings, for tastings, for errands. But I tracked it all. Every lie was a note in the symphony I was composing. By late August I knew the date. September 14th. A small venue by the lake. Invitations had gone out. I saw one stuffed under the passenger seat of her car, addressed to someone I didn't know. It wasn't a huge wedding, but it was hers, her fantasy, and I was going to end it on the altar. The morning of the wedding she left early, said she had to help a friend with last-minute details. She kissed me goodbye, casual, confident, not realizing that kiss would be the last she ever gave me. I drove out to the venue hours later, sat in my car, watching guests arrive, all smiles and chatter, holding wrapped gifts. They thought they were coming to celebrate love. In a way they were, just not hers. When it was time, I slipped inside. No one stopped me. They didn't know me, just assumed I was another guest. I stood at the back, hands in my pockets, heart pounding but mind clear. She walked in moments later, dressed in white, my stomach clenched. She looked radiant, glowing, every bit the bride. But to me, she looked like a fraud draped in silk. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke. The groom looked at her with adoration. She looked back, with that smile I remembered from the cafe. And then, just as they reached the vows, I raised my hand. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. Heads turned. She froze. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "I just thought," I continued, pulling out my phone, "before you commit your lives to each other, maybe everyone should hear what the bride's been practicing." And then I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. Clear, crisp, and undeniable. "He'll never find out. He's so clueless. I can't wait until September, when I walk down the aisle by the water. Finally, I'll be where I belong." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The groom's face went slack. She stumbled forward, her bouquet slipping from her hands. "Stop," she shrieked, her voice breaking. "Stop, please." But I didn't stop. I let the memo play, her giggling, her mocking me, her whispering about secret plans. When it ended, the silence was deafening. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. She said I was overthinking. "What do you all think?" The officiant stammered. The groom turned on her, his face red with rage. Guests whispered, shifting uncomfortably. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, her dress pooling around her like a broken promise. I walked out, calm, quiet, the way a man walks when he knows he's just pulled the final brick from the wall. The divorce was swift after that. Amanda handled it cleanly, the evidence airtight. She didn't fight. She couldn't. Her little wedding had exploded in her face. Her groom gone. Her reputation shattered. She moved out of town, too ashamed to stay. And me, I stayed. I rebuilt, slowly, carefully, on my own terms. People still talk about that wedding. How the bride was exposed by her own voice. How the husband she mocked turned the tables. Some say it was cruel. Maybe it was. But betrayal is crueler. She thought I was overthinking. She thought she was safe. She thought she could build a new life while laughing at the ruins of ours. But on that September day, in front of everyone she cared about, she learned the truth. I wasn't overthinking. I was paying attention, and I made sure she'd never forget.